Hello, I'm Heidi Howard, Public Affairs Officer with Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, and I have two very important guests with me here today. I've got Special Agent Brian Watson and Special Agent Kate Myers with the IRS Criminal Investigation Bureau?
We used to be called Division, but we just go by IRS Criminal Investigation now.
Perfect. All right. So thank you guys for being here with us today. We are talking about some very important things coming up. We all know that tax season is right on the horizon. So we are going to be talking about some scams and frauds that have been maybe resurfaced and currently are out there, and we want to let the public aware of those and maybe some tips and tricks on how to avoid and all that good stuff. So the first question I have, Brian, is what are some examples of IRS related phishing scams? And we're talking PHISH.
You're right. So phishing, PH, think phony emails.
Okay.
And a lot of times the scammers try to send them pretending to be from the IRS. And it may even have an IRS logo on there. And it'll say, you're due a refund, click on this link. Or your account's been compromised, click on this link. The key is the IRS does not send emails. We don't do that. So if you get something like that, delete it right away.
Okay. And I know that there are some places, maybe we can go over the locations where people can report these if they do get a call like that and they want to make sure that maybe they get ahead of the game and prevent it from happening to somebody else. Maybe we can talk about that at the end, but there are some tools and locations you can verify with the IRS, and you can also report that there might be a phishing scam going on. And so number two, will the IRS ever email you? You just covered that. No. Never, ever, ever. So how will the IRS connect with you?
Generally, they send out letters. We usually do several letter mailings before ever reaching out in another way. And in those letters, it might even identify how the next reach out may be. So if we plan to knock on your door, or if we need you to do something to get in contact with us, those letters will state what's next.
Okay. So U.S. mail.
Yeah, it's very old school, snail mail.
Yep.
I've received one of those letters myself. Made my heart skip a beat.
Oh.
You know, there was an issue with my return. I was able to explain the situation. Mm-hmm. I was able to send in some documents, and then I got a letter saying everything was good.
Yeah.
I was very relieved.
There you go. Awesome. Yay. Okay, so we just covered this again. Contact taxpayers via mail, U.S. mail. That's it. No phone calls. No emails.
Yeah, there's one small exception. If you received a letter in the mail, like Kate mentioned, you might get a follow-up phone call from that person who you were already in touch with. The key is you'll never get that call.
The initial
call, someone demanding immediate payment of money. That's the IRS phone scam, and you hang up on them.
Okay. And when they're demanding, I know that they're probably, are they doing the gift card version of the scam that you owe money? Go get this gift card, give me the number and scratch it off. It's the gift card, if you haven't heard of the gift card scam, it's covering multiple different areas, and so they have also started using this with pretending to be IRS, maybe even special agents. You never know.
So we don't ever demand payment immediately. If you have a tax issue, generally you're going to know about it because of mailing ahead of time, and so we would never demand payment of that tax immediately. We would never demand it in a gift card. And I think one of the most important things to just remember is the IRS isn't going to accept a third-party payment of any kind.
Okay.
So I know long ago I used to even hear iTunes, and I was like, how would iTunes do that? So it's just no gift card, no other third party.
Okay, got it. So that's great that we covered that. Okay, so if I hire a tax professional to prepare my documents for me, why is it so important that I review the tax return?
So it's very important because we're seeing a huge trend right now, nationally and here in Arizona, of return preparers putting fake businesses on a tax return. And the reason they do it is they'll create a loss, and that loss will offset the income. So it gives you a bigger refund. So you get more people in the door. And also the return preparer can charge more money because there's more forms. So a lot of people are scared to look at tax returns because they think it's in another language, and I'm not an accountant, but a good return preparer will literally explain every single thing that's on your tax return.
So this scam in particular is a warning against the person preparing your taxes.
Exactly. And 55% of Americans use a paid preparer. And
Right.
the vast majority, honest, ethical, we don't want people to worry. They're very good at what they do. It's
Right.
the very small minority
Yep.
of return preparers out there, usually the ones that just pop up during tax season, you've never heard them before, and they promise big refunds. Those are the people you need to be wary of.
Okay, so anything else in life, and especially when it comes to your legal affairs, your due diligence, double check.
Well, and ultimately,
That's good.
you're signing the return. That is your
Yep.
return. So you need to be aware of what's on it anyway.
Got it. Got it. That's really great. So what is a ghost preparer?
So ghost preparer sounds kind of scary, and it can be. It's basically a return preparer who does not put his or her name on the tax return at the bottom. If someone's paid, they're required to put their name. They're also required to put something called a PTIN, Preparer Tax Identification Number. And they do it basically because they don't want their name associated with that return. It's probably a bad return. So they're not willing to put their name behind it. So you get a return and it doesn't have their name at the bottom, you might want to go somewhere else.
Okay, so, now not to further instill fear on people, but there's a lot of commercial companies who will set up shop in certain stores or what have you. Are those people like, who are these tax preparers that we're finding? Are they just mom and pop advertising their services on Craigslist? Or can we find them at one of these commercial locations?
That's
that
a
are
good
set up?
question. Crime doesn't discriminate. So, it can happen anywhere. And I would say just be wary. Do those checks like Brian was talking
Okay.
about. Make sure that you go through your return. If you're going to somewhere, like you're saying, one of these big box stores that maybe has return preparers up front, it doesn't mean that's shady or anything. You just have to do your due diligence about going through your return and making sure, like we just talked about, that they're signing the return as a paid preparer and putting their PTIN on the return. And that is, again, the preparer tax identification number. And it's all in the jurat section where you would sign the return. You'll see all that right down there where you can actually look at it.
Okay, great, awesome. Identity theft when it comes to tax returns. When does this happen?
So we
At
saw
what point?
Yeah, so we saw a huge epidemic of this nationwide, maybe about 10 years ago or so. Criminals realized they could steal someone's identity, file a tax return, get a refund, and make money quickly. And a lot of these people were street level criminals, people with criminal histories.
Okay.
We worked a lot of these cases. And luckily, through a variety of different improvements with our filters and working with the tax practitioner community, working with the state governments, working with the companies that make the software, we've been able to reduce that number tremendously, but it still goes on. And usually you find out about it when you go to file your return and the IRS contacts you by letter saying, you've already filed, you can't file more than once. So then it starts kind of a painful process, but you will get your refund, but it's going to take some time. But the good news is we've seen a tremendous decrease in the amount of what we call tax-related identity theft.
Okay, so if that happens, let's say I file my tax return, it says, nope, you've already filed, you can only do it once. I contact the person who, I make the phone call, right? I get on the phone. The worst that is just affects my tax return, or should I also take it from there and assume that they've stolen more of my identity than just my tax return information?
I would say that that's a good point to go ahead and do the free credit check.
Okay.
And so I would say that that's a good opportunity to go out and see if there's anything else that's open, because that does mean that they had enough PII, so personally identifiable information, to file a return, meaning a social security number, name, address. And so those are all things that could be, yes, used for other nefarious activity. And I think that it would be a really prudent thing to go out and check your credit report and make sure there's nothing else open you didn't know about.
Great. Okay, great. Not great that this is happening, but great that we're aware of this, and that's the process that's going to happen. Okay, what do we have next? What is an identity protection PIN, and how do I get one?
So following up what Kate just said about checking your credit history and seeing if someone is done something else. The IRS, if you are a victim of tax-related identity theft, we don't want you to be a victim again. So the IRS actually issues you a PIN. It's a six digits, and think of it as a password for your tax return.
Oh boy.
You can't.
Get out your notepad. I'm
So
just kidding.
it's the return. So when you file your next return, you won't be able to file it unless you have that 6-digit number. And so it's a great thing. Well, and then here's the other good thing. You can proactively ask for a number to basically protect yourself. I finally did it this year, being a IRS PIO and telling about it for years to people. I finally went out like in December and got my number. It's free. It took about 5 or 10 minutes. So when I file maybe next month, I'll put those 6 digits on there, and it just think of it as protection. It's a password for your tax return.
That is amazing, and I'm really glad to hear that they did that. Do you know when they started utilizing a PIN that folks could get?
It's probably been over 7 years now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's been going on for a while, and then we piloted the program where you could opt in to about 10 states. Arizona was actually one of the pilot states, and it worked. So now all 50 states, everyone can do it. My personal prediction is 5 or 10 years from now, we're all going to have these PINs.
Right.
It's just, technology and getting caught up and getting people to change their habits.
Right.
It's more work. It's an extra step, but I think it's worth it. But the same thing, when you log into an account a lot of times at a bank, there's a lot of times that multi-factor authentication where you have to do like a second step, and we're always like, that takes so much extra time, and I just want to get into this website, but it's there to protect us.
Right. Think about the headache it would be to get yourself out of the mess of identity theft. I mean, it's worth it.
It's a lot of steps.
Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to go back just about getting the PIN process. I know it was the first time that you had done it, and we talk about mailing, and that's how we communicate. How did you actually get your PIN?
So I went online through it's an IRS portal, and I got it online, and then I believe they also sent it to me in the mail as well. So there was a little redundancy.
Okay.
And it was a very secure site. I was the one who, I'm putting my information in. I'm the one who logged into the site. But you're right. But they do verify a lot of information to make sure you're not an identity thief.
Okay.
So that's an instance that we did send an email, but it was a requested information, so you were expecting to look for that.
Yeah.
So maybe if folks go to irs.gov and they maybe can just search for identity
protection PIN. Just irs.gov, great website. Just in the search box, put identity protection PIN, and it walked me right through it.
Cool.
I had no problems at all.
Great. Otherwise, we'll have you call Brian. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
I'll give out his number.
All right, so, this is fun. This is a little twist on the IRS. I hope, is this going to, maybe this will tie in, but, Valentine's Day is right around the corner, and I'm seeing that there is a romance scam. Is this something new? This is something that was mentioned that Brian wanted to talk about specifically, and I'm interested in this.
It's
Telltale signs of a romance scam.
So the romance scam is when somebody befriends you on some internet site, a lot of times a dating site, and they praise you and say how beautiful you are or handsome you are.
They
and
love bomb you.
They're overwhelming, and before you know it, they're saying, we're going to get married, but this person is someone you've never met in person. It's only online. And what we found...
That's a clue.
Yeah. And eventually it gets to the point where they want money from you.
Clue number 2.
But then if they figure out you have no money, they'll use you to move money, to use you as an intermediary. So they'll use you as a pawn and have money go from one person to you, to them, to hide themselves. And then the latest variation that we're seeing, they'll actually get you to invest in crypto. You think, it's my money. I'm putting money into a certain crypto account. I'm going to invest for my grandchildren or my kids. But you don't have control over the account. And after a certain amount of money is into the account, like a lot of money, they just eliminate you. They just, meaning they don't talk to you anymore. They might, what you say, ghost you, and they disappear, and they have all your money. So I would say that's the latest variation where they get you to invest in crypto, because you're saying, I'm not going to fall for a romance scam. I'm investing in crypto, but you're really not.
And crypto coin Is that what, I don't know much about that.
So
I know
think
that-
virtual currency. So
Okay.
there's thousands of them. Bitcoin is the most well-known.
Yep.
And they're a lot of people are doing them now. It's kind of the
Yeah.
wave of the future, but you got to be very careful because they're not insured like a bank account, and there's not as much scrutiny by the government.
Right. I have to tell you, YCSO, we get a lot of fraud and scam calls from our community members. They have finally broke down and admit to themselves the fact that they have been scammed, and it's embarrassing and shameful, and they don't want to tell anybody, but it gets to a point where we're talking $75,000. I heard, I was talking to Detective Maddox, and he told me that was one that was so big here, and it's just, when it comes to scams and frauds, if you believe that you have been frauded or are being scammed, put that ego and that pride aside and reach out so that it doesn't go further than it needs to. There is no shame in that. And we, as much as we take those calls, by the time we get the call, there's very, very little that we can do to help.
It's too late.
But
Yeah.
the numbers of calls that we get locally, just here in Yavapai County, are abundant.
I think that's a really good key, is that you don't realize initially. I mean, these are sophisticated individuals that are doing this. They've done it a lot, and they've had a lot of practice. They've figured out what pulls at
What
heartstrings. So they might claim, they're in love and all this, is going on, and a medical emergency is happening, or there's some traumatic thing, they're in a flood, or some traumatic thing is happening where they're asking for the money. It's not just necessarily outright that they're asking for the money. The investment scam, as Brian was saying, is a newer one, but there's usually some sort of event that causes this money to be asked for. And so initially you think that you're the bad person by coming forward and thinking that you're defrauded, because you're thinking you're supposed to be helping this person.
Right.
So if you have any question at all, your gut is usually right.
Yep.
Go seek help.
Yep, exactly. And sometimes we have family members who call on the behalf.
Right.
I think
Right.
that my grandma, or I think that my mom or my dad is being scammed, and it's just, it's a horrible place to be. So with that, maybe it's going to be a little heightened now that tax season is around the corner, and these criminals, these opportunists who have found a lucrative way of earning money, or I'll use that term loosely.
Stealing. Well, let's say stealing.
Stealing
Yeah.
money. Are going to prey on people that they think that they can get something out of.
Yeah, these, like Kate said, they are.
Like your tax return, maybe. I don't know.
The criminals that we deal with are very good. They learn what works. They change their tactics. They literally follow scripts that are proven scripts, and they get rejected all the time.
Yeah.
But they only have to be lucky every now and then with the IRS phone scam, or with one of these romance scams, or these phishing emails. It doesn't
Right.
cost that much money to send an email out. It's
Right.
pretty much free once you have a laptop. And so they keep sending these things out, and they keep trying these crimes because they work.
Yep. All right, so I printed off straight from the IRS website, tax fraud alerts that are happening locally. I think we talked about abusive return preparer, which is either a ghost preparer or somebody who is,
I would say,
call it, the first one?
they're putting false items on a tax
False
return.
items on
Either
it.
false deductions, false businesses, false credits, sometimes false dependents. There's a myriad of ways that they can steal from the government.
Okay, and so then are they taking their portion out, or are they gonna say, this is my fee? They're gonna charge a bigger fee because of the size of your return. Is that how they make their money?
So they could do both. So that's one of those great reasons, again, to review your return, to make sure it's your account information
Right.
on the return if you're doing a direct deposit, because they could actually try to have that money deposited somewhere they have control. The other thing is, Brian talked about earlier, is these returns maybe will incorporate more forms, increasing the amount of money they can charge for the return to be prepared.
Okay.
And we've even seen instances where return preparers charge a percentage of the refund. And you might think, well, what's wrong with that? That seems fair. But if it's a massive refund and they're padding that refund so that they make more money. So you should never go to anybody who charges a percentage. It should be a flat rate depending on how much time is spent on the return and how many forms are on there.
And how many forms?
How
Okay.
complicated it is.
Got it. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I hope that this has been informative and not intimidating and scary. This is to give you some tools in your tool belt to beat them before they beat you. And I think that covered all of the scams that I have found on the IRS website. If you do come across somebody who's potentially scammed you, trying to scam you, or you think might be scamming other people, you can go to irs.gov and report them. So that's all we have. Do you have anything else?
Just, with anything out there, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. That's one of our favorite old axioms,
Yep.
especially with any sort of investment thing or any sort of huge refund. Just be very careful out there with
it.
your money and your personal information.
Got it. Kate?
I would say the same thing. If you're not sure of something, trust your gut. And there's always the website where you can research key terms like phishing or scams and get a lot of this information if you want more details.
Right, and it's very easy to find online. So thank you both so much for your wisdom and your knowledge. And it's been a pleasure. Hopefully we'll have you back.
All right. Thank you, Heidi.
Thanks.